Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to the beginning of another supporter week. It's been a little while since the last one of these, but I only aim to do 2 or 3 a year because I don't want to saturate the channel, as it were. So yeah, the point of these is to give some of my other Patreon supporters a chance at their time in the spotlight, because as you're probably aware, if you're a subscriber to the channel, I do a roughly fortnightly supporter spotlight video, which is for a certain reward tier of my Patreon supporters. And the point of the supporter week is to give all of my Patreon supporters a go. So you'll see some new names this time, some more diverse names, as it were. So we're going to start off with what isn't, however, a new name. This is Katia, and she's in the Tier 5 British Light, the Crusader, which is really a medium tank, but it does get the benefits of the light tank camo bonus whilst on the move. Not that that's such a huge thing these days, but you know, every little bit helps. So it's got the 6-pounder British gun, which is a very familiar gun to anybody that's played up through the British mid-tiers. It's got really no armour, pretty good mobility, and that's all there is to say about it, really. It's fairly similar to the M7 medium, which actually gets the exact same gun, the British 6-pounder. It is a pretty decent gun, but it has that disadvantage along with the Churchill 3 and the 82. The aim time is basically longer than the reload, so if you want to get the full rate of fire, you're not going to get the benefit of being fully aimed. So it's a bit like, it's one of these guns where it's a double-edged sword. It's really nice to have the rate of fire, especially when you're close up, but if you're trying to aim slightly further away, then yeah, you just don't get the benefit. So they've already lost a T-67 who just rushed in way ahead of everybody else and died, inevitably, but he's given them some idea of what's there at least. This is not a top tier game. There are a couple of tier 6s on each side, and I should say this is I think 9.15 this replay. We've got a bit of a mix of replays actually. Yeah, I think it's 9.15. It's a slightly older replay, and so this is old artillery. So it's, I mean, with the Burt, it doesn't make that much difference from what people were saying in the comments of my CGC video. And with the Lafayette, it definitely doesn't make any difference because that is basically unchanged. But, you know, it just seemed worth noting. So, in an attempt to get a gun on that Crusader, she's unfortunately taken a hit from the VK, and that, of course, has the short 88. So, that's a big chunk of health she just lost. However, she is undeterred. Some people would just back all the way off and just run away, but not Katia. No, she decides, as she's got this T1 Heavy here, to just go in and hope that the T1 Heavy takes the hint. And he kind of is, but she also kind of messes it up a little bit in that she doesn't quite complete her circle strafe, and she gets a bit stuck on the terrain, so she takes an additional hit, and that's not left her on a lot of health. So yeah, that makes life a little bit tricky. As for the rest of the team, while the T1 Heavy is doing alright, artillery is busily trying to kill her, but because they're both artillery with very small amounts of splash, it's basically going to need a direct hit. And, well, this Panzer Soufflé should be an easy one-shot kill, but that M4 wants to take at least 2. However, yeah, that Skoda T24 on the hill had other ideas, sadly. But although they are very even on numbers at this point, her team does seem to more or less have the upper hand, and I've actually sped up this last bit because rather than make you watch the slightly drawn out end to this match, yeah, basically her team has enough hit points left over, and their Burt actually really comes into his own at this point. He's just picked up 1 kill, and he's going to be in with a shot of a top gun at this in this particular match. So there's the Archer, just got one-shotted by the Burt. Not a lot of armour on that thing. T1's still got plenty of hit points, and we're now just down to the enemy Lafayette. Although, having said that, he's not going out without a fight because he's just one-shotted the Su-85 in return. And there we go. It's actually the M41 that took that kill, so no final top gun for the Burt. But as you might guess, he's done rather well for himself on the score screen. So that was a second class with, I'm not sure what that ribbon is, but some kind of ribbon. And as you can see, she's second place on the team with 11,000, 11,000, that'd be good, 1,100 damage and 2 kills. And it's actually the Bert in first place with 5 kills and 1,800 damage. So for that kind of matchup, 1,100 damage is fairly respectable, especially with the 6-pounder gun. And so, although, you know, this was a bit of a limbering up match because we've got 2 very good matches to follow, I picked it out because the Crusader is not a tank you see very often, and that was not a bad match. Next we have Gade 2000 in the T54E1, and this is an older replay. This is as old as I can play them without going and actually downloading even older clients. This is 9.5, so this is going back a ways. This is well back into last year. The T54E1, I don't think it's changed that much itself in the meantime, but there are, I'm trying to think if there are any, I don't think there are really on this particular matchup. The Walker Bulldogs and the 1375 are probably the most different compared to how they are now. But of course that's a very recent development with 918 having basically rejigged the majority of the light tanks. But as for the rest of the machines in play, I mean, there's the M12, obviously that will have changed, but I don't think there's been huge changes to any of the rest of them. He did submit another replay with the Walker Bulldog, where it was the old Walker Bulldog with the autoloader as he was playing it, and yeah, that thing definitely has changed. So he's already racked up 1 kill. The power of the 54E1 is the fact that it's got that 4-round autoloader with 400 shells, 400 damage per shell. Well done, Brain. You can tell this is not my first attempt at recording this. It's been one of those days or weeks or months maybe at this point. I don't know. But yeah, it can put out a lot of damage very quickly, and that's the, you know, if you can get up close, it's basically an auto-loading shotgun, this thing. But it doesn't do so well at range. It doesn't have particularly good gun handling, and the tank itself isn't that fast. Now, there was a bit of, I don't know if that was really necessary in the chat just then. I mean, clearly he was annoyed at not getting the chance to reload and put some shots across the map at the KV3, but it really wasn't necessary to chew out the T54 lightweight like that. And the lightweight didn't know he was reloading. He didn't actually indicate that he was reloading. So I don't know. Maybe it was just, I mean, this is going back a fair ways when he played this match, and hopefully he's a little more polite to his teammates these days. But maybe he's had a run of frustrating matches, or you just never know. Like you never know the context, and he probably doesn't remember the context himself. It was so long ago. So they've got a lot of tanks on this flank, and the enemy team, well, they don't have so many, but they do have a VKB defending, so that's going to be a significant blockade. Meanwhile, the enemy 54E1 has been spotted down here, and this is an excellent opportunity to knock out a dangerous enemy tank. So there we go, just blap, blap, blap. And that's another 1,000, just over 1,000 damage. And he actually, rather than use that last shell, goes for the reload. And personally, I would have hung on to that last shell, because he could have taken a shot at the T43. So that's one of the things with autoloaders generally. And although the reload on this isn't too bad, it's still 30 odd seconds. Sometimes it is the right thing to do to reload the clip when you've only got 1 shell left in it, but other times you want to hang on to it because you might get the opportunity to take an extra shot. So they've lost the other flank. This flank is the only side where there are any teammates left, and well, they could just straight up cap this if they wanted to, and so Gade heads back, as does the T54 lightweight. And this is where the autoloader is going to come in handy, because a lot of these tanks are quite low health. Now, not that Bulldog, but the KV3 is not full health, and the Tiger 2 is an easy one-shot. Now, that Bulldog has to be an auto-loading Bulldog, I think. So he's got to be a little bit careful here. But he gets lucky with a fire, so he only needs 1 shell. And if he can get a shot on the Tiger 2... No, okay, he's not going to get a direct line of sight. The lightweight has also died, but that's not such an issue. So if you can take out the Tiger II as a priority and then use the other shells on the KV-3. That would seem to be the sensible thing to do. He is, however, I mean, in the time he's taken to get here, he is one of the few remaining tanks on his team. Most of the tanks on the Lane Zero line, unfortunately, died. Now, if you're wondering why there's a KV-85, by the way, there was a bit of a failed platoon going on with him and the T-34-1. But surprisingly, that KV-35, you know what I mean, KV-85 is, he's going to have done better for himself than a lot of the higher tier tanks, including some of the top tier tanks. So, don't completely discount him just yet. Now, what the enemy team have left at this stage is a Waffle-Panzer IV, who I'm guessing did a lot of damage on that other flank, the MX M4, and the artillery. Gade himself, meanwhile, he's taken out the KV-3. He had to reload an extra clip for it and took an extra hit in the process. But fortunately for him, that KV-3 was not packing the 122. That is the 100mm gun. So that rolls for an average of 250. So if it had been the 122mm with the 390 average damage, he'd have considerably less health right now. So that was a stroke of luck. So he moves down across the middle. The KV-85 was actually able to withdraw and survive and respot the Waffenträger. So we know where he was last spotted. But they guessed accurately that he was going to come round this way, and unfortunately Gade takes a big old hit which actually sets him on fire. He does, however, have a premium fire extinguisher, so that wasn't immediately life-threatening. He does have this AMX M4 to take care of, though, and there's still artillery. So the AMX is a one-shot, an easy one-shot. Artillery fires and misses, so that was a little bit, you know, it could have gone wrong there. If the AMX had had more health, that would have been very difficult. But as it was, even though the Waffle-Panzer managed to roll rather high and set a fire, he had enough hit points to actually absorb it. And so it becomes even more lucky that the KV-3 didn't have the 122, because maybe that would have been the end of him. So no artillery here. The M12 could easily kill him on just 329 hit points. The KV-85 has managed to actually stay at full health, and he's got a kill. And like I said, he's not going to be the worst on his team by a long shot. Gade, meanwhile, he's on 7 kills. Now, he says in his description he didn't even notice he was on 7 kills at this point. And he urges the KV-85 to go on the cap, because he really wants this last kill, even maybe not being aware that he's on 7 kills in with a chance of a Radley Walters. So there's time for this. There's easily time for this. And having come all the way back over towards his own cap, he's been spotted, so he knows the artillery's over here somewhere. But he's not got a lot of time before this KV-85 actually completes the cap. Now, it was the sensible thing to get one of them on the cap. And if he'd really, really wanted to just end the game, he could have gone on the cap himself. But as it was, it worked out. With only a couple of seconds left to go, he gets the final kill on the Arty and the Radley Walters. And considering the not great gun handling on this thing, getting that final kill when he was on the move, that was pretty lucky. So that was an ace tanker, Radley Walters, high caliber, and the top gun, of course, and a pretty big carry. And I have to say, the lightweight that he was getting mad at, he did pretty well for himself as well. He was second place with 2.4k damage. However, Gade is by far the top of that team. This was his first Radley Walters, 5,300 damage, only missed 1 shell. Yeah, that was a pretty good game by anyone's estimation. And the KV-85, well, as you saw, he actually did better than the Type 61. So, yeah, the Type 61 clearly didn't have a very good game if he was outperformed by somebody in a failed platoon. Lastly, we have this T49 game, and we've gone from all the way back in 9.5 to bang up to the present with a 9.18 game, and one of the new, or well, rejigged light tanks. This, of course, was once upon a time the top of the American light tank line, but it's now the Tier 9. And although, as you can see here, with, well, it says Quio down there, but she renamed the account not long after this game to You Got Beat by a Girl, so you'll see replays under that name in future. Yeah, it's still got the big old 152mm derp gun, but it can also mount what is, I believe, a new 90mm gun. And you'll actually see one of the enemy T-49s using that later on. For now, though, she's done a little bit of spotting, done a little bit of damage, and avoided taking a hit in return from the pilot, but from the pilot it would have not been too bad. I mean, she's got 1400 hit points here, so it's enough to take at least a hit or two. Now, they're already a light tank down, one of the other actually new machines, the HWK-12, and that might be a little painful, but I guess we'll see. Now, she gets a bit lucky there, not getting hit by the E4. That would have been painful. Survivable, but painful. We also saw some of the new artillery in effect, because that was, I think, friendly artillery that managed to splash its allies. And that's one thing that was commented on in the artillery video I did. You really have to be a lot better these days about using the indicator, the map indicator, to tell your allies where you're firing. But even if you were, I mean, that would have been a bad spot to fire anyway, because there would have been no chance for the teammates to back off. Anyway, she's taken the opportunity to whiz in behind the T-49, hoping to get a rear armour penetration, but unfortunately it didn't happen. However, it was enough to weaken that E4, so her allies were able to finish him off, and she's going forwards to try and spot. Now, the Jagdtiger has been seen here. The T-49, one of the T-49s backed off down here, and almost certainly the two Swedish tank destroyers are back here as well. Of course, artillery is also liable to suddenly take a keen interest in her presence, so she's got to be a bit careful, and she's actually taking cover. However, she backs out just at the wrong moment, with the 261 hitting her for nearly 500 damage. So the pilots have showed up, the Emil 1's showed up, 1390 is just going for it, which unfortunately is going to get him killed, but the Guerrilla actually has gone back to base because they had a pair of Emil 1's and some scouts push round from the beach, and I think probably You Got Beat by a Girl actually noticed all this happening, because she's now whizzing back towards their own cap as well. Now, somehow that E-75 got round behind the Emil 1's without taking any damage. I think he must have dropped down to the beach around the sea line in order to try and flank them from behind. And he's going to provide at least a bit of a distraction, but not a terribly big one, unfortunately. So their artillery, or one of the artillery, is about to die to the scouts. The Guerrilla 15's looking rather unhealthy, and I suspect initially she was thinking about maybe trying to get some shots off on the 9-0 line with the backup of the Guerrilla, but that's not looking favourable at all, and she actually just once again narrowly avoids taking a hit, but this time from the Emil 1 it would have been rather less painful than from the E4. So there goes the Guerrilla, and she might get a hit at this T-49. Oh, there we go, he's actually popping out again. However, no, okay. That's a bit unfortunate. So, this is looking very dicey. They are outnumbered, they're being capped, they're a bit scattered, and of the enemies they're facing, there's some rather nasty machines around, including still both the Emil 1's, who are of course auto-loaders. Now the pilot one's gone far enough forwards to actually auto-spot, and at this point You Got Beat by a Girl just goes for it. I mean, she really, like, that right there, I mean, they had to kill that Emil 1, she had to take the risk. She avoided another shot, I think, from the T-49, because the other Emil 1 got killed by, I believe, the Stridswagen. So this bit of fast-thinking action has at least stabilised things for the time being. Another very close shot. That T-49 must have been cursing his luck. Now, the 1390 was clearly reloading, so she was able to wait until she was very close before she unloaded her big 152mm derp shell into his rear. And that was quite a good kill, because having auto-loaders running around at this stage of the game is always dangerous. She's spotted then that the Stridswagen in the middle is in trouble. So she's now trying to come round in time to help, and there we go, gets the kill. However, unfortunately, the enemy Stridsvagen, who had killed their remaining artillery, then kills their Stridsvagen. And this is a bit tricky. She could try and reposition, which would give him time to run away because he's in a fast machine, but instead she just goes for it, pauses just a moment to aim, and gets a very big hit, but unfortunately takes a very big hit herself from one of the remaining enemy artillery. Now this guy, I mean, he's in travel mode, and I think he's just switching to siege mode now, and that's very bad news, but she just squeezes in next to him. He fires his gun in frustration because he knows that that's coming. So that's the last of the tank destroyers dealt with. The T-25s are unfortunately themselves dead, and it's now just you got beat by a girl. And unfortunately for her, at that moment it was 4 versus 1 when she killed the Stridsvagen, so no Kolobanov's medal. So she moves to the middle again to spot, and unexpectedly encounters the T-49. Now that shot right there was very lucky. That was 100% just, auto-aim on the move. Could have gone badly wrong, and if it had, that would have been the game right there, because she was an easy one-shot for the 90mm of the T-49. But RNG rolled in her favour, and having held her nerve quite superbly up till this point, she now decides to play it a little more cautiously when it comes to taking out just the 2 remaining artillery, because they could both still quite easily kill her. So the first shot misses on that 261. I actually cut a bit out where she was spotting along the cliff edge to see if there was anything, and of course she found the 261, but with her first shell having missed, she's actually got to get herself spotted in order to take the second one. So there we go, he's down. She maybe initially thinks about taking cover by that bunker and then decides to just get on the move. And you'll also notice she's avoiding quite deliberately running over the barbed wire, because of course that would give her position away. So with a couple of minutes left, she's taking the time to once again spot the beach. I think she was convinced that the T-92 was heading towards their cap maybe, but time's running down if she wants to actually cap this herself. So she's making her way now towards the enemy cap, and she's still doing so relatively cautiously, because bear in mind she only needs a minute and a half to win this, but the closer she cuts it, it makes it more likely, like if the T-92 catches her with a splash in the cap or whatever, and resets when there's less than a minute and a half to go, then that's it, it's a draw. But no, she makes it to the cap without instant, and initially goes to take cover beside the house. And the T-25 pilots are immediately telling her not to do that, because that's the obvious spot. If you're sitting in bushes in a cap, or you're sitting next to a rock, or by a house, if an artillery is trying to blind fire, those are the obvious spots that an artillery would fire at. And of course, with 918 artillery being how it is, that T-92 is going to be able to fire rather faster than he used to. So there's one blind shot, and in ye olden days that would have been it. That would have been the last shot he could have taken. But no, he's going to get time for one more. So yeah, the pilots are having a guess as to roughly when it might appear. And there it is. They were off by only a couple of seconds, but it was well away from where she was. So yes, in the end, I mean, she could have tried to hunt down that T-92, but she took the safer option and secured the victory, because if she'd gone after the T-92 and gotten unlucky, maybe she just felt that she'd pushed her luck enough for that game, the T-92 easily could have blatted her. But as it was, no, that was an ace tanker, high caliber, a Top Gun, no Radley Walters this time, and an Invader medal. 4,800 damage, 7 kills, 1,600 base XP, not half bad. And the pilots, despite being bottom tier, actually managed to place second and third, so they must have done reasonably well for themselves for being bottom tier. Now, she didn't make a lot of money. In fact, she lost rather a lot of money, because I think she was firing premium HE for most of that. But that's maybe what you do in this tank. I don't know. I don't play the T-49. I've never gotten that far up the American Light line, so Maybe that's just the normal procedure when you're playing with the derp gun, is to use the premium HE. But regardless, I think she had to be rather happy with that result, and it was quite a tense, entertaining match, I thought, and certainly a good one to introduce her to the supporter spotlights. So that's it for this first supporter spotlight. The next one will be some warships replays. I'll probably do that. I'll alternate between tanks and warships. I'm not sure how many videos there are going to be exactly. At least 5, possibly 6, and maybe even 7 if there's enough material. But we shall see. And then once it's all done, it'll be back to normal. So yeah, as I said at the top, it's just a thing I like to do every so often, because it's a nice way to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, and also there's a bit of self-interest in that it highlights that I do have a Patreon page set up myself, so, you know, everyone's a winner. So hopefully you enjoyed this set of replays, and if you did, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.